Thank you for joining. We'll let the people in the meeting know that you're here.
All right, we got about another 3 minutes. We're trying to get somebody remoted in.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
We're almost there. No pressure. You ready? Okay. Recorder's on. Back. Ted, are you back there? Ted's ready. Okay. Good evening, everybody. It is now 7:08. You are at a Common Council, City of Wausau. It is July 8th. City Hall, Common Council Chambers. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk, call the roll, please.
We have 11 voting members present. Oh, right.
All right, no proclamations tonight. First up is public comment for pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. First to the mic is Jay Cronenwetter.
Good evening. Jay Cronenwetter. I live on Sturgeon Eddy Road here in Wausau. And I'm here to speak on the Bridge Street mission and essentially my concerns about the contract that has been put forward here. First off, I'd like to commend the members of the Finance Committee who attempted to table this because, as is a continuing tradition in this chamber, you are rushing to vote on things that have just been put into a packet, and in this case, it's a contract with like $1 million or $1.2 million worth of taxpayer money that I don't believe any of you possibly could have seriously reviewed. I'm a trained lawyer. I had a little bit of a heads up and had a chance to review it, and what I found is that it's a very sloppy document in a lot of respects. In fact, even just the citation of a right to cure when you have a violation of the contract cites the wrong section of the contract. It just has the wrong number. They're just, basic errors like that. But, the fundamental problem here, in my eyes, has to do with the absolute lack of employee protections. That is, employees of the Bridge Street mission that you are looking to contract with. I think that when we spend public money that is going to be used to employ citizens in this town, we need to respect their rights as workers. Sad fact is under state and federal law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, as well as the Fair Employment Laws of Wisconsin, no longer
Thank you for
provide-
joining. We'll let the people in the meeting know that you're here.
Sorry, Jay.
If you want to let them in, that's fine. Otherwise, okay, so, the problem here is that by Bridge Street Mission's own mission statements, things that are publicly available online, they indicate that they will not hire homosexuals. They indicate that they will not employ people whose sexual behaviors are contrary to their interpretation of the Bible's views on such things. Now, I think as an employer that's disgusting. I think in most contexts, in almost any employment context, that would be prohibited by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act as well as under our state fair employment law. Unfortunately, with the rapidly expanding ministerial exception that the courts are giving to faith-based organizations who take this nonprofit position, those protections are nil. And I would point to the Ninth Circuit of all places. I think ask the city attorney the significance of that in terms of being probably the most liberal circuit court in the country. Just last year, they indicated that when an employee pleads just basic pay discrimination, fraud in promises of employment, promises of future raises and promotions, as well as non-payment of overtime because they were considered a ministerial employee of this organization. They were kicked out of court. They were not able to sue under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So as you hand off $350,000 this year, $300,000, or I guess next fiscal year and the year after, et cetera, up to $1.25 million, be aware that you are paying an organization that reserves the right not to hire people based on their religion or their sexuality, to fire them based on their religion or their sexuality. In fact, to violate their rights to just basic overtime pay when they are forced to work more than 40 hours a week, and that they will be denied access to the courts because you decided to contract with a faith-based organization that considers part of their job proselytization. Read the employment advertisements that they have online for positions like case managers and the rest, and you will see that they clearly claim these to be ministerial positions, and they reserve the right to not hire based on their religious beliefs. So I don't think that anyone who respects workers' rights or labor in general should vote a penny to that contract, but an easy fix would be to make these funds contingent on them respecting employees' rights of non-discrimination of the like of Title VII and the state laws. You just need to build them into the contract. So I would urge you to follow Councilman Gisselman and delay this, punt it down the road, and fix a really sloppy contract.
Thank you, Jay. Up next is Christy Scheidel.
Hello, my name is Christy Scheidel. I was homeless for 4.5 years. And I am now temporarily housed. I was an alcoholic. I went through treatment. But it's been a long road to hoe. In the proposal that the Mission Street has given you, there's only a 60-day limit. And then they will only give you an extension if you have something in the works to go live there or a placement pending. It's not enough time, I can tell you right now. The homeless people, most of them have some type of barriers, either a criminal background barrier or evictions, things of that nature. And it took me a month and a half to find a job, and I'm now only working part-time. So I think you guys really, I agree with Jay, I think you need to really look at that contract and see exactly what's in it, because I just don't agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Vicki Harness.
Good evening, everyone. We're getting a late start, I guess. My name's Vicki Harness. I live in District 10 in Wausau. I am currently the Executive Director for the Community Outreach Task Force. We work with the homeless on Wednesdays and Fridays. We run the Marty Bus, which I'm sure most of you know what that is. We provide clothing, hygiene, survival items for the homeless, and we work with them very closely. We have a bike program. We've provided homeless people 135 bikes so far this year. We have also started a locker project, which has been in the works for about a year. We finally found our first location for a locker, which has had given 3 clients a place to put their belongings for the last month without any issues. While I appreciate the work that Bridge Street Mission does, because their programs are helpful for a limited amount of people is the problem. And so while they run a tight ship and a good program, the contract that they have written has right in it that they would only allow residents for 60 days and only an extension if they had a placement pending. I think that's an issue. I'm also concerned about the religious beliefs, and then putting that on to the clients that aren't ready for that. In speaking to our clients at the Marty Bus, which I can tell you our numbers have grown, we are feeding between 75 and 84 people every Wednesday and every Friday. And it's a large group, and days are tough. And we work with them outside of their Wednesdays and Fridays. We get calls on Mondays and Tuesdays. We pick up bikes and bring people bikes that have just gotten jobs and need transportation to get there. We did that yesterday. What I would really urge the council to do is to put this off for just a couple weeks and look at this closer. I understand that there isn't anyone else that has stepped up to say that they could do this. However, if you're going to buy a car and it has a clunk in it, but it's the only one for sale, you're not going to just buy that car because it's the only one for sale. You're going to keep looking for another car because you don't want the one with the clunk. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Sandra Kelch.
I stand before you today to address a matter of urgent concern, the well-being of our LGBT community. Members of this community face disproportionately high suicide rates, a tragic reality that demands immediate attention. You will be voting on whether to allocate public funds to Bridge Street Mission, a proposed shelter that claims to serve all, but operates under a doctrine that excludes LGBTQ individuals. Their practices openly marginalize a significant portion of our population. I urge you to consider the implications of funding an organization that perpetuates exclusion and discrimination. We must not support an entity that discriminates against any group, especially when it comes to providing essential services like a shelter. To draw a comparison, consider the outrage we would feel if public funds were allocated to a group with a hate doctrine such as the KKK. The harm caused by discrimination is the same, whether it's based on race, religion, or sexual orientation. The City Council has a long history of not properly vetting agencies, their programs, and employees before handing over public funds when it comes to the unhoused. Money has been given to agencies that hire predators, quietly allowing them to leave to avoid scandal. Some members of the City Council, as well as others here tonight pushing for this, know exactly what I'm referring to. I fear that this could be another situation where public funds are wasted and vulnerable individuals, especially the LGBTQ people and women, are further traumatized. These past experiences underscore the importance of thorough vetting and accountability. The safety and well-being of our unhoused and the most vulnerable must be a priority, not simply voting to fund any group that volunteers to open a shelter. I ask you to vote against allocating public funds to Bridge Street Mission and any other organization that discriminates against our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Nancy Stencil.
Hello, Nancy Stencil, 223-281 Azalea Road, Wausau. And first off, I would like to commend Councilman Gesselman for suggesting that contract be looked over a little bit better. I do struggle with the fact of using public monies for private shelter. I realize that the city of Wausau does feel like they have their backs up against a wall to do something to help. But when it comes to instilling religious beliefs on other people, I do volunteer as well at the Marty Bus. And we are often told by our clients that they are fearful of taking shelter in such a place that will inflict religion on others. And I just feel that the fact that you're entering this contract for a set amount of time, what is another week or two if you have to have a special meeting or whatever, to really look at this and look at this thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was the last I had up here. Did anyone turn in a sheet that didn't get called tonight? Seeing none, no communications tonight from the mayor. On the consent agenda is next. I have one item that we are going to pull and bring back to the next one. We have a few items to clean up on, and that is the 6/10/2025 meeting minutes. Other than that, everything that's listed in the consent agenda would be considered, and we're looking for a motion on consent. Are we? Okay, now we got them. Motion from Watson, second from Neal. And again, this is everything under consent with the exception of that first item, the second set of minutes from 6:10. Seeing no comments,
May I begin voting? Motion passes 11-0.
All right, first item up tonight is 24-1109L. It's a finance resolution adopting 2025 budget modification for city attorney legal fees. That passed finance 5-0 a couple of weeks back, and that was in the packet. I have a motion from Watson, second from Larson. Questions, comments? Seeing none.
May I begin voting? Motion passes 11-0.
Up next, file number 24-1109M. It's another finance resolution adopting 2025 budget mod for airport capital projects, terminal renovation, furnishings, and apron project. These are items that weren't covered under the original FAA project. We have a motion from Lukens, second from Martins. Seeing no questions for John.
May I begin voting? Motion passes 11-0.
All right, up next is file 25-0703. This is a joint resolution from HR and Finance authorizing the reclassification of city assessor and deputy city assessor with the reclassification and name of the property appraiser to property appraiser 1 and the creation of property appraiser 2 position. This was approved in HR 4-1, Finance 3-1. I have a motion from Lukens, second from Watson. And you need some more discussion on that. Seeing none.
May I begin voting? Motion passes 10-1.
Up next is file number 19-0921. This is an ED, Economic Development Resolution approving the Second Amendment to the Development Agreement with Foundry on Third, Phase 1, LLC. This was approved 3-2 from Economic Development. I have a motion from Lukens, second from Tierney, and we do have Nick Patterson on the line from T-Wall, and we have Andy and Randy. We're going to show the video here first.
Yes.
We're going to show a short video. There's no sound or voice, and
I get the pleasure of narrating this, yes.
Andrew Lynch will voice over for us.
Yep, so a couple weeks ago, the mayor and I and some other members had the pleasure of touring the Foundry building with Terrence Wall and some members of his team as well. Obviously, this is all very familiar to everyone. It's a little bit more complete now, given the time that's passed. So this is over on the east side, on the 5th Street side, and you can see the inner courtyard there. And we're going to go on to the commercial space on the north side here. So this is the unfinished commercial space at this point. Over on the right side, you can kind of see an angled door that leads out to the 3rd and Washington Streets intersection. So that kind of gives you a little orientation. This space will be finished off as what's called a gray box, ready for customization to the tenant. This is one of the hallways on the 2nd floor. You can see it's a little less finished, and one of the units on the 2nd floor as well. And one thing that really struck me throughout this whole tour is you could definitely see a lot of the quality finishes they chose for cabinets or other fixtures. It's definitely something that's apparent. This is one of the studios where they separate, kind of wall off the bedroom area from the living and kitchen and kind of integrate those areas together. And it has a small, I guess it's called a Juliet balcony, looking out into the courtyard there. So it's kind of a nice way to use that space. Obviously, there's definitely some areas where, they're still working hard, but there's other units, mostly on the south side, which they built first, that are pretty much done. And there is the final punch list of items to take care of. You can see this, this unit looks pretty much ready to go. And it looks like a nice quality place to live. And this is a view from the 2nd floor southwest corner. You can see how close you are to the street, so it still doesn't feel like you're up too high. You can see the crews there pouring the street, which is now, I believe, paved. And then the kitchen for that unit, I believe that was a 2-bedroom unit. Or I could be wrong, it could be a 3. And this is the skywalk going from the Foundry building over to the parking ramp. And this is up on the 5th floor, one of the more finished hallways. And again, here's a unit that's pretty much ready to go. A couple final items. You can, maybe see some pieces of tape they've left around to do touch-ups. This is on the southwest corner of the building. You can see Rib Mountain in the distance. See parts of downtown and across the river. So really nice views, really stunning. And this is kind of the opposite corner on the northwest. You can, see the umbrellas on 3rd Street, see the rest of downtown, and then you can also look to the west and see across the river and then further south to Rib Mountain. And this is a look at the courtyard. There's going to be tenant amenities. And finally underneath here is the parking garage. And one thing that they noted is they're going to end up painting all the walls and pillars white to help reflect the light and make it a very bright space. But that's a quick 4-minute tour there. But yeah, definitely a very fascinating building. Very good. Really pleased with the progress we've seen with them. So looking forward to getting it done.
Thank you, Andrew. One of the things you might have seen on there that was the countertops. The countertops were one of the things they had a delay on, and they were being delivered when we were there that day, or some of them were already installed, so that's a good thing. Comments, questions for Andrew? And we also have Nick on the line. Mr. Neal.
Thank you. Well, it seems like not so long ago we were standing out there when they broke ground. Even with, concerns about supply chains and delays and things like that, progress has been pretty dramatic. I'm really happy to see how far along it is. I think this project brings so much to the downtown experience going forward. All of those balconies, Shortly, we're going to be seeing plants out there and residents out there. The feel for downtown, the culture of downtown will be dramatically altered for the better. So I'm really happy to see where it is, and certainly support this very small request for an extension for the completion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nick, did you have anything to add here?
No, I don't. Andrew summed it up very well, so I appreciate your consideration and available for any questions.
Alder Lukens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also express my support for this. I'm very excited to have this nearing completion, and I think, as Alder Neal said, to have people downtown and moving around and that will be exciting for the businesses as well. So we really need that. Looking forward to it, and thank everyone for the work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have not been a proponent of the Foundry on Third, but this seems like a practical business choice to see something progress this far and then to say, no, I'm not going to give it time to finish does not feel very practical. So I am going to support this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing nothing further.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-2.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to leave.
All right, up next is suspension of the rules. This is a rule suspension under 6B. Filing and/or 12A referral of resolutions requires a 2/3 vote. Motion from Watson, second from Rasmussen.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-2.
All right, first up is file number 25-0704. It's a Finance and Public Health and Safety Joint Resolution approving contract for emergency shelter services with Bridge Street Mission, Inc. That passed earlier today, 4-1 from Finance and 4-1 from Public Health and Safety. I have a motion from Rasmussen, second from Larson. First up is Alder Lukens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I voted against this at the Public Health and Safety meeting, so I have several concerns. I did volunteer at the Methodist Church and for the emergency shelter, and it was an excellent experience. But since our last meeting, I've had a surprising number of people reach out to me about this that are asking for us to give it some more time. They're uncomfortable with it's not, I want to make it very clear. The people that have reached out to me have all said that Bridge Street Mission does good work. It's not about anything personal about Bridge Street Mission. It's nothing personal about Mr. Vincent, that he is a man of integrity, so it's not that. But a lot of concern has been expressed about the doctrinal part of the that staff has to agree to. It's also the campus of the new building, that both will be at the same place. I know that there are benefits that have been expressed to that, but then there are also, some have expressed to me drawbacks of that, of influences having both, that might negatively influence the other, of having both on that same campus, as well as, the size of it being smaller than the current Methodist building. But one other thing that I mentioned at Public Health and Safety is that while in the contract, and I too would prefer more time to look over the contract. But anyway, one thing that had been mentioned to me by a number of people is even though there is in the contract that there is not to be any discrimination, people that have been oppressed by religious organizations, that may be a barrier for them in accessing services from Bridge Street Mission Emergency Shelter. And I know the chief brought up that, that same thing was brought up regarding, police, police abuse or whatever. And I understand that. But I guess it's just a number of reasons. Also, that we don't have a signed contract from the county, and I thought that that's what we wanted originally, but that the county, we have funding through this year, but not after this year right now, a guarantee of that. And there was one more thing, and now I can't remember what that was. But anyway, for several reasons, I guess what I would prefer, the other thing was to sign it for 5 years. And I realized that Bridge Street Mission would like that guarantee because they are waiting, for this agreement in order to go ahead with construction. But I'm uncomfortable with a 5-year contract. I would feel much better and with a 1 year, or also that there is some type of can we in 6 months, what are the metrics of this? So how many people are they serving? And I realize that fluctuates, but anyway, for a whole variety of reasons. And because I really have heard from a lot of people that are concerned about this, and I know that this is something that we all care about. I thank the police chief for all of your work. A lot of, people have spoken so highly of Tracy Durante and all of her work, and, have said she's a hero, and she truly is. And I will say that I've had quite a few people that have said, what about, could we have something that where she is the one overseeing, a program. I don't know about the possibilities of that, but she has done tremendous work. And so anyway, for that reason, I can't vote for this as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really a tough choice for the council because I think a lot of us are conflicted. First of all, I did not appreciate getting that contract this afternoon and not having an opportunity to review it. I thought that was very untimely. It does nothing for our public. And I also am aware that our backs are against the wall. We need a shelter. But like Ms. Harness said, if there's only one car, do you go out and buy it because there's not another car, or do you take some time and see if there are any other options? The first thing I'd like to do is acknowledge the very positive work that Bridge Street Mission has done in our community. They have done so many positive things for residents. I would also like to acknowledge the very positive comments that our Chief Barnes has made regarding Craig Vincent. I agree completely. I, too, in my interactions with Mr. Vincent, have found him to be extremely capable, kind, and caring. However, I have to state what is obvious. We are the government, okay? Tonight, we're sitting in a chamber of the government, and we are making a decision as the government to either contract or not contract with an entity that openly discriminates based on sexual orientation. And I think this was done earlier, but I'm going to read their statement off of their website. It says, although we will continue to love and serve all people, Bridge Street Mission will not knowingly accept or retain employees or staff volunteers whose sexual behavior violates these biblical truths and principles. As the government, it is our responsibility, it's not an elective, to make sure that nothing we are involved in or support is discriminatory. There's something of really great importance, in my opinion, that I believe we should think about right now. All of us, just a few minutes ago, stood up from our chairs in front of the flag with our hands on our heart and made a pledge. The pledge stated, with liberty and justice for all. It did not state liberty and justice for all unless you are gay. We as a government body should not be contracting with any organization that is not an equal opportunity employer or that will not willingly commit to complying with all non-discrimination protections. Our city policies should all reflect non-discrimination. It is also my personal belief that as human beings, our differences are to be acknowledged and celebrated, that not one of us is better than the other. Therefore, I will not be supporting this resolution. In addition, I would like to see more time, as Alder Lukens has indicated. I've had a tremendous amount of feedback about this. And again, it's not about Bridge Street and that they don't do a wonderful job. It's about their doctrines. And I agree with Alder Lukens that these types of doctrines can cause trauma for people. And yes, maybe they're being addressed and maybe our contract is loosely written, but to be honest, I haven't had time to really review it. So I'm not going to be able to support this. And in the future, if this comes up again, and if it could be delayed, which I would like to see as well, I would like to have us all have the time to really take a look at this contract and make sure. We had an attorney stand up here and say it's not very well written, it's not very tight as far as the discrimination policies. We need to know that that contract is tight and that maybe there needs to be something in there. Maybe we need to have an amendment tonight that says all parties, this is contingent on both parties agreeing that they will fully comply with all non-discrimination policies set by our state and our federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Neal.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thanks to Chief Barnes for giving us, many of us, the opportunity last week to go see firsthand and help out at the sleep center. It was sort of a pretty warm and humid day, pretty humid down there in the basement as well. I think I would suggest a lot of dehumidifiers down there. But seeing the people walk in, we had over 50 men and I think 20 or so women. They came in, and they came in kind of looking a little bedraggled and sweaty from their time out in the day. It wasn't the most comfortable weather that day. and they were able to, take a shower, get freshened up, get something to eat, have a place to sleep. It's definitely a very clear and present need. And I found myself even then sitting there, what if it were February right now? And they came in, boy, they might have had a really rough day. So the other side of the coin is if this was not available, I have no idea how they would survive. Things are pretty nasty up here in winter. So I think we have if I can use the word sacred, a sacred duty as a city to see for those people and to protect those people, in many cases, from death. That's a pretty basic responsibility we have here. Now, as far as the Bridge Street mission and their doctrines go and whatnot, I am firmly opposed to proselytation. If I probably didn't use the word correctly. I'm opposed to discrimination in hiring and staffing. But what we're looking at here is providing a service to a very needful part of our citizenship. It's the service. It's a very basic life service that we're looking at here. Not protecting them from somebody saying the Our Father in front of them or whatever. We do have assurances that these services at the emergency shelter will be devoid of religious, overbearing, proselytizing, forcing any kinds of participation in anything religious oriented. I certainly hope that we can, make sure that that is the case going forward, and I'm sure that we'll be able to verify that on a regular basis. It's something that we need to keep an eye on, keep people honest, if you will. Chief Barnes, I have a question or two, if you can step up, please. Not going to grill you or anything.
Let it rip.
On the page 2 of the document of the that was sent to us, I think this is page 2. Yeah, it's page 2. A paragraph about in the middle says, although not part of the RFP. See that one? Having all these services under
you're
one.
Referring to the memo.
Yeah,
Let
I'm
me
sorry.
get to that.
Yeah. Having all these services under one roof is advantageous. These programs will operate independently and have separate participation requirements. So that pretty much addresses our chief concerns about keeping religion out of it for this service that we are looking to underwrite. The second paragraph, importantly, the draft contract, and I will note that it is a draft contract, right, Chief? And you still have the wherewithal to address some minutia between now and signing?
Correct.
Okay. Contains language requiring non-discriminatory access to services. This is where it gets a little possibly sketchy for me, because the mission commits to providing shelter regardless of faith, gender, or lifestyle, ensuring an inclusive and equitable admission process. So is this meaning that the day shelter would also be available to the needy and not be requiring any kind of religious participation requirements?
So I haven't negotiated day shelter or anything with Bridge Street Mission because it's not something that we're funding. I can tell you that in my conversations with Craig Vincent, the exact same criteria that are outlined here, which is it's serving anyone regardless of faith, gender, lifestyle, will apply to the day center.
I would hope that it does, because the monies that we're talking about would go towards making that service available. So that, we're part of that service.
Our funding is for emergency night shelter. Bridge Street Mission is funding their day shelter services as well as their women's recovery and their men's recovery. 3 totally separate legs of a 4-legged stool, one of which is emergency shelter. But I
I feel very confident, because I find Craig Vincent to be an honorable, honest person, that those same criteria for night shelter exist with day shelter. And the ability, especially in those cold months you identified, the advantage to us is you can be in night shelter and transition to their day center without having to go stand outside.
Okay. Well, yeah, because, I'm thinking that we don't have a spreadsheet in front of us of how the monies are spent, for the emergency shelter in terms of infrastructure, supplies, food, salaries, whatever. But the same goes for the day shelter. We are, underwriting essentially the infrastructure, the ability to provide the day shelter services, even if it doesn't right now say in the contract that the day shelter is part of this agreement. I would hope to ensure that it is. I don't want any instance where the day shelter becomes, well, you can come in if you, submit to some kind of religious screening or something, or lifestyle screening or anything else of this sort. The only thing that I see, although I don't like it, is the recovery center type offerings. If that is, is voluntary and it's upfront, that it can have a religious aspect to it, which I guess it probably does.
It's a faith-based curriculum.
Sure. I can accept that, although I don't like it, because it's an important service to offer and people can really benefit from it, whether or not they buy in on the, supernatural aspect of it. But I just want to make sure that anything regarding shelter, getting something to eat, is part of our partnership and that is somehow covered in our contract. And I trust that, that between now and finalization of the contract, you can look at that and make sure that that is covered. I don't want that somehow to be carved out and treated a different way. Food and shelter during the day is the same as food and shelter at night.
Yeah.
In February.
Sure. I have no issue discussing that with Bridge Street Mission, and our city attorney and I can clearly work through that with them. I think that the challenge to that is the day center exists with or without the night center, without the night shelter. That is something they are providing. The capacity of their day center is 120 people. The overflow capacity of their night shelter is 75. I'm not sure if I found myself as a vendor having someone dictate what I can do on something that they're not paying for and not funding. So I don't know how that conversation will go. I think that, but it's a conversation I'm willing to have with them.
Okay.
I know their commitment is to serve everyone in their day center and feed everyone that comes in, regardless of all of the factors that we've discussed.
Assurances going forward would be nice if it was somehow penciled in there. Lastly, our unhoused population tends to gravitate and habitate around the city center. That's why, services like, night service, warming center type services have been around downtown, walking distance, if you will. This new facility is a little bit outside of that core area. Is there any thought given to, in February, riding a bicycle might not be, optimal. Walking might be the only option for many. Of setting up some sort of transportation agreement with our transportation authority here to offer like something in the hour leading up to check-in for nighttime to get on the bus and get on over there. I think that that's something that, otherwise, how are they going to be getting there en masse, day after day, night after night? So
Yeah, I can tell you that transportation is a key component of any plan to deal with unhoused issues in any community, but especially ours. Number one, our public transportation only serves the city of Wausau. There are limited hours, and I have been working with our director of Watts to look at what are creative solutions to some of those transportation issues. So that's on the docket.
Okay.
If I can butt in, we do use transit when we have our community on call, and we do have a bus when it's extreme cold, and we do the community on call to get them to the alternate shelters. So we can do those kind of things.
Okay. Well, I just want to conclude and thank you for your patience, everybody, for my lengthy talk here. I will support this mainly because I see it as a very dire need. Timing is important. Build out is important. Winter is coming. And I think we, having no other option but, we should grasp this and make the most of it and be good stewards of it and make sure that we have good eyes on it and reportage, like you mentioned, available to us so that we can have some sort of recourse if something pops up that we find alarming. So I will support this tonight. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Thank you also for the flexibility shown by all involved to host the joint session tonight between Finance and Public Health and Safety. That allowed a number of us to hear from Chief Barnes, to hear from Tracy Durante, and discuss as two committees that are both stakeholders in the outcome and the service that we're contracting for to get those questions answered. I guess that a couple things that stand out to me. Immediately what stood out to me was the separation of the emergency shelter from the voluntary participatory programs that exist at the mission today. Their ability to silo that off and keep that separate and serve all who have a need it helps me tremendously in making this decision. The other thing I will say is that when Bridge Street Mission first acquired their building on First Ave, they had a grand opening celebration. I wasn't able to attend, so I arranged for a tour after the fact, and I walked through the building with Mr. Vincent, and the one thing that stood out to me was the respect and the dignity with which they not only refer to their guests, but with which they treat their guests, right from, not only from the meal services and from the day center, but the waiting area and the appearance of the facility and the quality of the facility in which people wait when they're waiting for services. Think about when we first started a warming center in Wausau. If you remember back, we had that in the back of a downtown church also, and people were lining up in the dead of winter down an alley near the transit center. It couldn't have been worse. And I mean, we've come a long way, and we've had many iterations of the warming center with the opening of CPC. Obviously, we had services at Catholic Charities, but we know from the reports that we got from that facility and from the reports of our outreach coordinator, that shelter was not sufficiently large to meet our needs. And their turnaway rate, winter and summer, was really high. And so if you were lined up at the door and you couldn't get in, at some point, people quit using that shelter because if you're not, depending on when you arrive, if you can't get in, at some point you just give up. And what I really, when we volunteered at the shelter, for those of us who volunteered, we got to meet the shelter guests. They were gracious, they were friendly, they were grateful. They were insightful. We sat and had conversations with them before and after the meal. We learned some of their history. That experience could not have been more valuable for us. And, I do think that last winter, there was a need for activation of community on call, I think just during the month of February, weeks on end. And that showed what deficiencies we had in our shelter system. And that's how we learned that our capacity at 30 was not even close, that we needed to be closer to 60. And I think that we're contracting for a service. I think it's important that we focus on contracting for a service. We're not being asked to manage the program or manage the mission. We're contracting for a service. At one point, we also contracted with Catholic Charities, also a faith-based organization. And so, this is not unprecedented to have this type of contract for service. The contract had legal review from our legal staff, who I trust. I trust them. I trust our legal team, and I trust Chief Barnes to negotiate the appropriate contract and review it and get us a product that we can stand behind. I like the fact, and my residents have told me they like the fact that this plan over time weans itself off of public funding, and that at some point it will become self-sustaining, and that the mission will be able to provide those services without government funding assistance. That's important. I think that our goal in running our WMC shelter from the beginning was temporary. We cannot have Tracy working 14, 15-hour days to do both jobs. She was not hired to run a shelter. She has skills in that area, and she was gracious enough to help us with that when the need arose. But what I am really uncomfortable with is the idea that if we don't get this done, I mean, that space has to be built out. There's permits, there's contractors, there's materials. We cannot afford to wait. And I cannot accept a situation where we drop the ball here and come winter, we have 30 people outside again because there's nowhere for them to be when we were presented with the opportunity to keep that from happening. And I think we have to own the outcomes of all of this, success or fail. But if we don't take this plan, which checked all of the boxes in the RFP, and we create a situation where come winter, when it's really tough here, that we have 30 people outside or more walking the streets because they can't get into the tiny shelter that still exists, that's our fault. And whether we want to admit that or not, and whether we love the vendor or not, we have the ability to keep that from happening. And we have to take advantage of that opportunity. You don't have to love the provider, but what you have to hate more is the idea of people having nowhere to go in February. And we were lucky that with Community on Call, the community stepped up and pinch hit where we couldn't make it. But we can't rely on that opportunity forever. I really think that we need to get this done, and I feel like we need to get it done now. If there were a half a dozen proposals for this, and there were entities out in the private sector that were willing to do it as a neutral option, that's one thing. But we've gone through 2 complete RFP cycles, and none of that has come forward. No one else in the community providing the services or possessing the skills to do it have shown themselves. So I really believe we need to move forward, and I have no problem in supporting this project because our goal is to take our most vulnerable population and keep them safe from the extreme elements. And I mean, that really is our task here. And Alder Neal hit right on the head. We need to keep people safe. And knowing how many people we served in the heat of the summer, if it was 20 below, those same numbers couldn't get that service if we don't create a place for them to be. So I really hope that we will support this and that we'll move it forward and that we'll do it in the time frame with which that the vendor that has made the proposal can get their space built out and be able to provide that service for us. So thank you to everyone who worked on this. It's been a Herculean effort. I would like to hear from Chief Barnes if anyone has questions for him on any of the points in his memo that we did not cover tonight. We covered his staff memo in depth in the joint committee meeting. He did accurately point out that the proposal we have met all of the criteria that we asked for. And this is a contract that we asked for. The provider didn't come to us knocking on the door and say, hey, let me be your shelter. We went out and asked the community, who among us can do this job? And they came forward. And they made an offer to us, and they have the space. They're willing to privately fund the build-out. That's huge, as long as we can get that contract in place. And if, through the budget process, we can find a way to partner with Marathon County, either using unspent reserve funds from their initial commitment, or if they're willing to partner with us a little longer term, having them in partnership with us is very, very helpful because it allows us to sort of regionalize the service a little bit. We don't complain about the fact that if shelter guests are arriving from the suburbs, if we're in partnership with Marathon County, they should be. But if we alone are funding something, then we're back to the same push and pull we have that, we're underpinning the program, we're not getting any help. And I really think that we will be able to show that the WMC shelter was a success when it gets to the end of its tenure. I also think we're going to be able to illustrate the strength of our partnership when we work with our partners in county government. That's going to be a big win for both units of government, and hopefully they'll continue to partner with us. But those discussions can't happen if we don't do this, because the funding for the build-out at the mission doesn't come if there's no contract. So this is really step one. We've got to get this off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there was concerns regarding the website and what it says regarding the sexual orientation or having the same religious practices as what Bridge Community has. Now, what the chief had put together on this contract, if you look at the last page, there's a bullet point that says non-discrimination. Providers shall provide emergency night shelter services under this contract on a non-discriminatory basis, regardless of faith, gender, lifestyle, and no beneficiary of service under this contract shall be required to participate in any explicitly religious activity. Provider agrees to comply with applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including those concerning non-discrimination and civil rights. So I think that kind of answers the question as far as who this emergency service is going to allow in their program, and that's everybody. When people come in for those night services, they are not going to be asked what's their sexual orientation. All are going to be welcome, and that's on the contract. Mr. Vincent was here a few weeks ago, and we talked to him about volunteering. And he said for somebody to volunteer at their shelter services, they don't have to be having the same religious values that Bridge Street Mission has. He had said they just had Sam's Club's employees there, and they volunteered, and they could have any religious ideation that they wanted, and it wasn't a criteria to have the same like-minded religious values. When asked about what it says on their website regarding volunteers, he said volunteers on this level that are helping with the night services, it doesn't matter what their religious beliefs are. It's when they have the higher up volunteers on a higher level. Now, as far as the next level, going into looking at rehab, transitional living, if people are uncomfortable doing that with Bridge Street Mission, we have another option for them, and that's Tracy. That's what Tracy does at the police department with her job is working with the homeless, offering solutions, and a lot of her time has been spent on the homeless shelter, so she hasn't been able to put as much into that. So she has a purpose there that can help people who aren't comfortable going to Bridge Street Mission for these types of services. I know there's a lot of people out there that are concerned, but there isn't another alternative. After 2 RFPs, this is what we have. And again, I think like Alder Rasmussen, that time is essential. They are volunteering to build an addition and not asking for money from the city. We have to provide a place for our unhoused when it gets to be winter, or if the heat is 90 degrees out there. They have to have a safe place to be able to sleep, have a meal, have a shower, regardless of who they are, what their addiction may or may not be, what their mental health may or may not be. All are welcome, and that's truly what is important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going back on history a little bit, I remember walking through downtown and walking through the encampments and stuff, and the uncomfortable decisions we had to make back then about Are we going to commit to our city ordinances, or are we going to let these encampments continue to grow? And I remember talking about the downtown businesses and the problems they had with the needles and stuff, and it was a very, very hard decision to say, you know what, these can't be here. We have to live up to our ordinances. But it wasn't long afterwards, maybe 2 weeks afterwards, that tent that was underneath Scotts Street Bridge would have been washed away because of a flood. And moving on to today, we've kept moving forward, maybe in baby steps and maybe in giant steps. I don't know, but when I volunteered at the shelter, when Alder Neal was there and other council members, I didn't see any gay people. I didn't see any religious people. I didn't see any racist people. I saw people helping people. So if you're really serious about going down and helping at any kind of shelter or anything, leave your gay card at the door, leave your religious card at the door, and just go down there and show some love and show some help. I mean, I am fully going to support this because I don't want to be in a position where these people have no place to go, where they have no other choice than to live underneath a bridge or set up a camp, because no, we've been there, done that. This is a solid step forward. As I said earlier in a public health and safety meeting, it would be nice if we had a organization that in everybody's eyes, dotted all the I's and all the T's, crossed the T's, and met everybody's expectations. But you can't please all the people all the time. And I am going to support this wholeheartedly because I care for these people. They need a place to go. I mean, if you really need an education, go down and volunteer at the shelter. Go down and help. Just as I have, and just as when I toured the homeless encampments, I think we've made a lot of giant steps since the homeless encampments, and I hope that I will be supporting this to continue to move our city forward to help our homeless individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Lukens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief Barnes, could I ask you a couple more questions, please? So the first one is, can you tell me how long the 2 RFP cycles were each?
Is an estimate okay?
Yeah.
They were 3 weeks to a month that they were published.
Okay. So each one, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so we're talking about 2 months total that we've had it published, looking for responses. Then the other thing is, I've heard now a couple of times in public comments, and I don't know about the 60 days, that, like, there's a limit of 60 days. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
Okay.
And thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. What Bridge Street, number one, during my research to develop what should be in the RFP and what do we expect from a shelter provider, accountability came up, not just from myself, but through every single unhoused individual I talked to, about what things should we do in providing shelter services to help you move forward and leave homelessness. And they all unanimously agreed that accountability was important. And I talked to them about what does that look like? And they're like, everything, like there has to be a motivation or potential consequence if you're not doing anything. And I don't accept homelessness in Wausau as a lifestyle. I think we need to look at homelessness as a situation someone's in, and everything in their power and our power to leave homelessness is important. So what is included as a opportunity or a suggestion in their proposal, which also leaves open in negotiation with the city to look at what that is the opportunity to guarantee an individual a reserved bed. This is your bed for the next 60 days. There's no requirement at the end of 60 days that you have to go into Bridge Street Mission's second tier, I think, as you might have heard, or their programming. But the goal is, if somebody at 60 days, that's how long it's guaranteed for. Meaning on the 61st day, it's not guaranteed. But the expectation is while people are in shelter, and you will notice that Bridge Street Mission doesn't just provide shelter service, they're providing case management and navigators and a contracted obligation to partner with the other service providers in this community in order to move people forward. If they're making progress, that's what we want. Welcome to stay, and that guaranteed bed can be extended. So it's not saying 60 days and you're out. It's saying you are guaranteed these 60 days. You're not guaranteed beyond that. And that's the motivation to say, if you want to stay here and be guaranteed your bed, we need you to make some progress in some of these recommendations. And we've talked ad nauseum here about each individual, and those of you that volunteered at the shelter saw a wide range of individuals that need a wide range of resources. And so identifying what is it for that individual that can help them move forward or move that needle. And there's an expectation that people are going to utilize resources. Some might do it very quickly, and some it might take longer. But all the 60 days is saying is you come in the door to use shelter services, you're guaranteed your bed for 60 days.
Thank you for that. Okay, so if at the 60-day mark, someone, is wanting to progress, so I guess I'm just trying to think, so what if they are, then the options are to move to their other programs? Would that be correct?
No, I would say over the 60 days that they're there, they will be meeting with staff, a Tracy-like individual that's employed by them as part of their program with the shelter, or Tracy, or other case managers from within the community. And we identify what is something they can be doing to help themselves. If somebody refuses to do anything to help themselves, and they're capable of doing that, then they're not guaranteed a bed beyond 60 days.
Okay. So then my other question is, I guess I'm going to go back to the same, I'm not comfortable with 5 years, that we have to commit to 5 years through this contract. Like, I would be, again, with getting this, as Alder Killian was stating, I would like more time because this is complex. There's a lot to think about. I understand Bridge Street Mission wants an answer, but as Alder Gisselman asked, for some time for us to more process this and think about it. I mean, that's what I would like. And we have until December 30th, right? So what if we say we come back at next month's meeting?
I think you put in jeopardy the ability for us to open the shelter in a reasonable time. Because there's multiple moving parts. I mean, I respect your position and the things that are concerns for you. However, from a business organizational standpoint and having negotiated with them, they have to raise $1 million of commitment from this community in order to build that out. The 5-year timeline not only gives them the ability to be financially stable and comfortably for them with confidence be able to reach the point in which they're not relying on levy dollars, but it also says to those individuals they're asking for $1 million that this is going to be in existence for at least 5 years. And I can respect the idea that for the kind of money they need in order to be able to provide this service, they expect 5 years. And unfortunately, I believe that if the things that you would like and expect in this contract were required by us, we will not have shelter for these individuals because we will not enter into an agreement with Bridge Street Mission. And come the end of the year, we are going to end up in the situation that Mr. Larson was discussing. And that's not because that's what I want. My hope is for Bridge Street Mission to work themselves out of a job in this community. And I'll state something that I said during the previous meeting. I don't have the luxury of ideology or my own personal beliefs or faith or having any of that have anything to do with this, because I have the responsibility to keep people safe and keep them housed. And this is the only solution I can bring to you to do that. And that takes precedence for me. Their safety is more important to me than their hiring practices. And that's the situation I find myself in.
Thank you. Once again, I appreciate everything you've done. I 2 month. I don't know. I guess just the way that I feel is to keep saying we have no other options, and maybe we don't. I don't know.
I mean, we don't.
But to
there aren't any.
But to say we have no other options and we've had only 60 days. And I know this is lives, I get it, but I guess I can't, again, I cannot vote for this tonight in the form that it is. I just can't, because I think that and it's not to, deny what you've done, because I know you've been trying to find a solution for a long time. It's just, to me, I don't know, I guess with all the concerns that have been brought to me personally, I can't in good conscience vote for this tonight, especially if it's a 5-year. If we could say 1 year at the most or something like that, but I understand. So thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. First, I think it's important to recognize that the mission believes that they are very confident in their ability to fundraise the amount of money they need. They already have some leads on that. Public health and safety and finance, when we talked about this preceding this meeting, one of the things that I discussed as a way to continually monitor the deliverables that we're expecting is that the Public Health and Safety Committee will be tasked with an ongoing review and oversight of how this is working every single month when we get our reports from Tracy. She's going to have data numbers from who they're serving, how many and what numbers. She already knows that from the intake sheets at our current shelter, almost all of them are people that she knows that have been utilizing services in this community for some time. So, she will know from that data, and we will know from that data what our service numbers look like. We've also shown that we're willing to commit to an annual review. We do this a lot with a lot of other things. We take stock of how it's going. And so there's no reason why in that committee we can't have a standing item every year to take stock of that effort and take stock of those results based on the culmination of those reports every year before we ratify our budget for the next year. So that all can be managed. What I'm stuck on is that none of this is going to be any different in 2 weeks, And none of it's going to be any different in 2 months. What's going to happen in 2 months is it's all going to be worse. We're closer to the deadline. We are going to run out of time, money, and zoning. And so the idea that we have a finite period of time to fill this need, none of us wanted to be in this position. None of us enjoyed the fact that Catholic Charities pulled the plug early and left us in the lurch on May 1st. But we figured that out with the understanding that all of it was temporary. And we need to let that be temporary. Like our goal all along was to hand this off to a qualified nonprofit that could do the work. They're here, like the proposal. This is what we asked for. They agreed to do everything we wanted. And they're doing it slightly cheaper than we're doing it now, which is a benefit. So, 20%, and the idea that people have to at least be doing something to get on a path that gets them to a better state, there's nothing wrong with making that ask, because 20% of our shelter guests already have jobs. When they came into the intake the night we were there, they asked for alarm clocks because they had to get up and go to work. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's already, since we've had the shelter open in May, people have come, they've used the shelter, and they've moved on. They've gotten jobs, they've secured apartments, they're out of it. It was a short-term situation. We filled that need for them. That is the best possible outcome we can hope for the guests that we serve, is that they will get on a path to self-sufficiency or recovery. Doesn't have to be using the services that are located next door, but there's an awful lot of services in this community that can help people, and we've got case managers and a number of nonprofits, and we've got Tracy, whose job it is to connect people with needs to services that can help. That's why I think that we're going to be successful with this. But I also think that not only is it no different by waiting, it's actually all worse, because we're using up the time for the build out over at the Mission. And if that doesn't happen, we're in big trouble. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alder Rasmussen indicated that nothing would be different in 2 weeks. There is something that could be different. We have been handed a lot of information in a very short amount of time, and I guess that's not atypical. That's not an atypical happening in this council. We get very important, relevant information at the last minute, and sometimes we can't make really good, sound decisions because we aren't given that information in adequate time. And what could be very different in 2 weeks is that we have had time to process all of this, ask relevant questions, talk to our constituents further, and really make a sound decision. I don't see that, we talk about the finances of Bridge Street Mission, but what about the finances of the residents of the city of Wausau? Where's this money coming from? We don't even know that yet. So I think there are a lot of things that we need to consider, and there are a lot of questions that we can ask, and maybe all of us will feel very comfortable with this proposal in a couple weeks. But I really think it's important that we have time to process some of this information. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll comment quickly to that. We've had some string bets coming in on our agenda packet, and it's something that I don't like to see, but I did talk to staff. We had the next item as well. It wasn't for lack of effort. They've been working diligently on trying to get this put together so that you would have what was intended. And if we look back, as Mr. Larson says, we've come a long way. Look at December. We had 2 meetings over the holidays, if you recall, to discuss what are we going to do when the Catholic Charities leaves. So we reacted to that, and we've had roughly 6 months. The anticipation was we were going to find somebody to fill the role of Catholic Charities on May 1st or whatever that was, and we determined then that that was a bridge too far. So we have had time. We have been using our time to fill this void, and this is where we're at. And so it's been 6 months, and to delay much longer, we're going to be into that critical weather, and when it's not going to be comfortable for anyone. Looks like one more popped in here. Alder Watson.
I'll be short, but one suggestion was to bring it to finance at their next meeting. And I think would it be that bad to bring it to public health and safety one more time, finance one more time, and then come back to council at the end of the month? Because it is a contract that we have to look at. Our constituents didn't have a chance to really look at it. We didn't really have. I have a few questions too, but a good portion of our council is sort of, just wants a little more time to act. Is 2 weeks gonna make or break it? I know they're also having their meeting next week as well. And so it sort of seems like a perfect timing for everyone to think about it a little more. That's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
See no further questions.
Can I amend the table or something then?
Would like to motion to table?
Yes.
Lay it on
I know it's going to be uber popular. I can tell.
So we have a motion so we have a motion to, how about you're asking for a motion to postpone to a date certain?
Yeah, or
rather than
action.
table.
But I would like to table this till our next regular meeting, beginning of July or August, after Public Health and Safety and Finance have had better discussions on them as well.
Chief, if you could address what that does to Bridge Street Mission side of things. So we have a
Point of order, can we get a second on that first?
I would second it.
We have a motion. Hang on a second. We had motion from Watson, second from Lukens.
I would simply say I would be very concerned about the timeline you proposed, the different moving parts of this that are required. So my understanding, I'm not privy to the conversations, but the entities that are being sought after to do the funding are waiting to see what happens and contractors to be able to be lined up. And I think this being postponed a month has two potential outcomes. 3, like maybe it works, it kills the whole thing, or it pushes, my understanding of how this works is a couple weeks now results in a couple months on the tail end because it postpones all these other moving parts between contractors, construction, and most importantly, the funding for their build out. But I understand your point and your concern.
Yeah.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I really feel like we're equipped to act tonight. 2 committees acted on it and it passed them both. I feel like we need to move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we are now voting on the motion to postpone to send back to Public Health and Safety. Can you read that? What is the actual motion?
I have motion to postpone item 25-0704 to the August 12th, 2025 Common Council meeting.
Claire?
Unless you would like me to add specifically Public Health and Safety and Finance committees.
I don't think it's necessary. It can be put on their agendas, I'm assuming.
Okay, you may begin voting. Motion fails 5-6.
So we are back to the main motion.
That was an accident. I don't know if Alder Rasmussen really wants to speak.
Okay, so the main motion, we had the motion from Rasmussen, second from Larson. Do you need me to read it? This is joint resolution from Finance Committee, Public Health and Safety, approving contract for emergency shelter services with Bridge Street Mission.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-3.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Up next, how's everyone doing? We got one more item. 22-1104 is a council resolution approving the quitclaim deed for releasing a portion of reserved easement rights at 700 Grand Avenue, 700 Grand Apartments LLC. Update on that is that property closed pending this item today. So we have the sale closed. Anything to add to that, Randy? Or we have a motion. Let's take a motion from Henke, second from Tierney. Any questions for Randy?
Just a quick explanation. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. As it often happens when we're closing on properties, you have lawyers, you have people that are funding the projects, and everybody's digging into the deep, deep details of this. And as that happened, they had some questions for our attorney, Ann Jacobson. Ann's been working with them diligently on this specific issue, probably 10 days. And as we were trying to get to a point where everybody's comfortable with the closing, they asked that we take this action to clear up the easement, and part of that comes with the way the right-of-way was vacated for this property. If you have any specific questions, Ann can answer those. But as the mayor stated, they were able to close today contingent on this item being approved. So excited to see that moving forward. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Seeing none?
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-3.
Okay, up last, public comment and suggestions. Anyone looking to make comment? We have 3 minutes for you.
Tom Killian, 133 East Thomas Street. So I understand the tough position with some of these dynamics with the shelter, but I think one thing must be clear, and there seemed to be confusion tonight. This body, nor anybody from Wausau to Washington, D.C., has the right or discretion to dispose of certain inalienable protections that Americans have. That is not a liberal way or a conservative way. That is the American way. We just had the 4th of July. Hopefully some people read the Declaration of Independence, and what it said was the people's rights were not endowed by the government, actually a creator in the document, and government has no ability to take them away. Government is here simply to serve as the servant and to secure those rights. This was such a fundamental, foundational principle in our country that the prescription in the Declaration is when the government does not do that, that government should be altered or disbanded. Now, you say that in public these days, at best you'll be laughed at, and at worst you'll be put on a government watch list, but those are our foundational documents, and this government has no ability to discard people's rights, nor does the police department or anybody else. And this never should have made it in front of the council. It put it in a bad position. Every contract that the city of Wausau has with anyone should have a boilerplate copy on it that says all federal non-discrimination rights shall be complied with. This has nothing to do with religion or faith. There's a lot of religion or faith that is not exclusionary. Most of the benevolent faith is about love, not exclusion. That should be on every city contract. It should never happen again. That was low-hanging fruit, and that should be done by this administration. Otherwise, it looks like Bush League government, and again, this government nor any other has the right to discard these rights, not on sexual orientation or anything else. Secondly, I'm happy to see the theme of accountability discussed, but I would ask the question then, is that just about those who are facing extreme poverty? Is that the rhetoric in Wausau? You just gave $11 million to this project for luxury apartments. Will that be the message to Mr. Wall next month, that you must be accountable because it's time to stop feeding taking out of the trough of the taxpayers, or is that accountability just for poor people? It shouldn't be. So instead of hypocrisy and the inability to really cast aside these rights, it should be consistent, and that is the American way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion from Tierney, second from Gisselman. All in favor? Aye. See ya.